Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello, and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Joan Buckley from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. Today, you're going to learn about the role that men play when it comes to fertility, conception, and the overall health of a baby. My guest today is Ayla Barmmer. She's a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and functional medicine practitioner. Despite what men say, or the statistics say about men accounting for nearly half of all the fertility problems, infertility is still commonly regarded as a woman's issue, leaving men feeling left out without purpose, and their actions actually can make a really positive impact. So I want to welcome Ayla Barmmer to the WHPC, Your Family's Health, the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. And I want her to introduce herself and a little bit about the why. We always want to know why certain people choose certain topics to really focus on and they're passionate about.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the introduction. I can tell you a little bit about how I wound up in this area of work as a dietitian, which, fertility wasn't a common area of work when I started, but it is more so now given the degree to which nutrition and lifestyle really impact fertility. My work with couples in the fertility space evolved over years in practice. I've had a private practice in one form or another for over 15 years, and wound up really getting into this specialty due to a need that I saw in my community. And really, I came to learn that was reflective of a much larger need in our country. It really all started when I was being referred couples, actually really just women, I should say, not couples. I wound up working with couples over time, but just women were referred over to me from a local fertility clinic, and they were being told, you need to lose weight as fast as you can, as much as you can, or else we're going to cancel your cycles, which was incredibly stressful and just felt like a little bit, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I knew there had to be more that could be done to really support women. And I also saw the huge toll, the detrimental toll that trying to aggressively lose weight before trying to conceive really had on bodies, on mentally and physically. And over time, I also really realized that men had to be part of the picture. If there was a male partner, that was so critical based on the research that I was finding in my literature reviews, was so critical to successful outcomes. And so over time, as I just dug into the research and practiced and saw more and more clients, I really started to truly specialize in fertility. And it was amazing to see the outcomes, and the successes. And at the, in the best case scenarios, we were able to avoid some really expensive fertility treatments. And I mean expensive in terms of the financial investment, but also the physical and mental toll that some of the more aggressive treatments really can take. But, even at the other end of the spectrum, I felt that, we at least were really improving outcomes of some of these fertility treatments, and also having a huge influence on the health of the pregnancy and baby's long-term health over time. So I get really excited about this topic because based on all my work and the research that I see, I really think that the preconception period, the 3 to 6 months plus, before trying to conceive, is such a critical time to influence the health of future generations. So it's really like the ultimate preventative medicine.
I just have a question, because you mentioned in the beginning that women are referred for weight loss and things like that. That impacts their self-esteem. And I remember, and I didn't have a weight problem, but I know plenty of people that do. And when someone says that for any reason, it just kind of puts like a blanket over them. They're like, it's like my fault, already it starts with being the my fault. But when you say the husband as well, right, or the father of the child, however it is, it kind of really just talks about healthy living, kind of like try to be healthy. But to be referred for weight loss, I'm saying you must have had an awful hard time convincing these women that it really wasn't their fault. It's part of it's their community and whatever else goes on.
Oh, absolutely. It was heartbreaking, truly, to see the impact, that it was having. I mean, they were having these expensive, really, I know, well-intentioned, specialists telling them, you've got to lose weight. This is all on you. And if you don't, then, you're not going to have a baby. I mean, the pressure, right? And not to mention that really isn't sage advice anyway, because you don't want to go into, there's a few reasons for it. I mean, really fertility, the preconception period is a time to focus on adding the right stuff. We want to replete nutrients. We want to really make sure there's plenty of resources available to support good reproductive health and fertility. And so by restricting, and what would happen is, a lot of these women would go on too low calories. They were under eating, over exercising. And what happens then is, metabolism starts to be turned down. The thermostat in the body really like turns down, and our metabolic system talks to our reproductive system. They're actually reciprocally regulated. So when metabolism turns down, reproductive function turns down. So from a fertility clinic perspective, they're using external hormones, and they're going in and retrieving eggs. And so they're not as concerned with that. But I, as a dietitian, am really concerned with the impact that will ultimately have on the health of the pregnancy too. So going beyond just getting a positive pregnancy test, but really thinking how healthy is this pregnancy going to be? How healthy will mom and baby be, postpartum? And so that should be a consideration.
Is the physiology so different in a male than a female that it affects the sperm? I know that it must, because that's what you do for, your life. And but is it so different? I mean, I never thought about it until really I started listening to you and reading some of the things that you've written. I never saw it as that different. Like if I went on a diet, my whole family went on a diet. It didn't matter who you were, what gender you were. You all got in. So what's so different about a man that it really does affect that baby?
So there's a lot that we could cover here. I think first and foremost, I will say the good news is that there are absolutely a lot of overlapping nutrition and lifestyle changes that really will benefit both men and women. And so it doesn't have to be separate protocols, separate meal plans. There really are very similar things that both can do, but the impact for both is a little bit different, but equally important. And I probably should at least mention, that even though we think of women's health as fertility as a women's health issue, the statistics really show that it equally is both partners contributing, both men and women contributing, I should say. So we really 30% of fertility issues are attributed more to female factors, 30% attributed more to male factors, and then the remaining 40% is what we call unexplained infertility, which is the most frustrating diagnosis of all. And that usually tends to mean a combination of both male and female factors. So it's equally a shared issue. Men play a unique role, though, and a much bigger role than we ever have given credit and still give enough attention to. And so the things that men do in men's health in that preconception period, so 3-6+ months is what I usually say before conceiving, will have a huge impact on pregnancy health and baby's long-term health. There are pregnancy complications that we can tie now back to men's preconception health. So miscarriage, pregnancy loss, preeclampsia, preterm birth. So we know, and this actually, when I saw this in the research, it really blew my mind and kind of, I think really drives home the point of how important it is. But male factors actually play a slightly larger role in the development and the health of the placenta than female factors. And that's crazy because, women actually grow this entirely new organ in pregnancy, which is the placenta, to nourish baby. And so obviously they have a huge role, but via epigenetics and various signaling that happens through the sperm and semen, that is affecting the development of the placenta. And I mention that because a lot of pregnancy complications can be, like preeclampsia, have been tied back to the health of the placenta. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to educate most on, because, men, it's not just about, again, the positive pregnancy test. We're thinking, and gosh, when there's a miscarriage, when there's a pregnancy complication, women feel to blame. They shoulder that burden. Like it's something that they've done, and it was their health choices. And we know that that's really not the whole story.
Wow. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. My name is Joan Buckley from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, and today you're learning about the role that men play when it comes to fertility, conception, and the overall health of a baby. My guest today is Ayla Barmmer, a registered dietitian, nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner who specializes in fertility issues. And my next question for you, because we are talking about the role of the male in the pregnancy, and you just brought up this really, I never thought about it at all, but the effect of the sperm, semen on the development of the placenta. I believe that's where we left off.
Yes.
How about age? Does age of the man have anything to do with it? Because I know with women, we have X amount of eggs and things like that. Do you see anything that relates to this placenta development or anything like that related to the man?
Yeah, for both men and women, as we age, there's more likelihood, there's a higher chance that there will be chromosomal errors, in egg and sperm. And so for men, they do have a larger fertility window than women do, and we don't see significant declines until, and at least in the research varies on this a little bit, but really age 45 and older, those starting even at age 40, you're more likely to see just the cumulative effects of stress on the body impacting sperm health. And that's what I can say from practice, is that that's a major contributor to overall men's fertility is oxidative stress. And it's one of the reasons why, and we get oxidative stress from things in our environment. Our modern environments have more pollution, toxins, chemicals, exposures, things like that than medication use, things that we may not have had to the extent, or we did not have to the extent as we do now, that our body just has to process. And that requires a lot of nutrients and a lot of antioxidants to help combat it. And I see over time, depending on the individual, depending on genetics, their environment, their lifestyle, that can have a bigger impact than age does. So that's, I think, the good news for both women and men is that there's a lot of emphasis put on age in the fertility world and in the research, but I really see it as the cumulative effect of stressors that we can help essentially reverse the clock in a way, by addressing those, by really flooding the body with the right stuff.
We talk about a planned pregnancy, preparing the body. What could you say if you became pregnant about changes? Would it still be as effective? Like I know you talked about, taking in some antioxidants and the omega-3 vitamins and all those things. What could you say to someone who didn't plan the pregnancy? Now they're in the pregnancy. How can they also have a healthy baby?
Even if you didn't plan your pregnancy and you find yourself pregnant, or I would just say if children are at all potentially on the horizon, there are some things that I would encourage most people to just consider doing. And I know, some, listeners may have heard kind of, or from a provider, or, have seen the recommendation. It's kind of a public health recommendation at this point that if you're of childbearing age, you should take a prenatal or focus on, certain nutrients. And I think that there needs to be more context to that and what that really means. And I'll more directly answer that question because I think it's really important. But one of the things that is needed a few of the nutrients that are needed very early on in pregnancy, like before you even know you're pregnant, are folate, B12, and choline. Those three are kind of like this trifecta that really help promote the proper development of the neural tube. And so help you avoid neural tube defects. And the neural tube actually closes week 5 of pregnancy. And for those that aren't totally familiar with, cycle tracking and that sort of thing, I mean, that may be just 1 week after a missed period. And usually that's all it is, or a few days after a missed period. So you may not have even thought to take a test yet. And so making sure that you're eating really folate rich foods, enough choline. 90 to 95% of women aren't even meeting the adequate intake level for choline. And we know actually that adequate intake level is like bare minimum. And the research shows that it should really be double. At least during pregnancy, we should be doubling that amount of choline. So it goes from around, 430-ish milligrams, 450 milligrams to upwards of 950, milligrams of choline needed in pregnancy. And so, choline and folate and B12, that trifecta, are actually very rich in foods that we used to historically eat and we don't as much anymore. So organ meats. And a lot of people and my clients, and even myself, I'm not accustomed to the flavor of, organ meats like liver and things like that. And, really had a bit of an aversion, but as I got into the research and just realized how incredibly rich they are in fertility supporting nutrients, I have tried to work them in one way or another and recommend them quite often because it's a way to very easily get a lot of those nutrients. But, egg yolks, animal source proteins, and this is a little contrary to a lot of the messaging that we're hearing right now around plant-based diets and avoiding animal foods. I would say that in the reproductive years, for fertility's sake, it would be a mistake to omit animal foods altogether. Or if you feel strongly about that, or you do for any specific reason, you're going to want to supplement with the things that you can't get enough of in a plant-based diet.
It's really interesting because I think someone in my household, we have a couple of vegetarians floating around, and they're now debating the plant-based foods, the way they're produced, and now they're all producing their own, everything's lentil, this and that. But it's got to be very difficult for you because of all those things that I just talked about, like vegetarian, that's big now, and it does seem so healthy. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine cooking liver. I mean, I know my mother did for years. It was liver and bacon, and we had it probably quite frequently, but I can't even imagine. Are there any other sources that are easy? Like, is there a pill that you could get, like, liver strength from? Is there something, and you said eggs, you said protein-based foods, animal foods. But is there something, because that liver just really hit home there.
I know. And I'm like, I hope I didn't just cause everyone to tune out.
No. You made me think of my mother. Okay, there you go. She was a good woman.
Well, and actually that's a good opportunity to make the point too that, we benefit from what our grandparents did now. So there are aspects of fertility that just absolutely are not in our control. That's no surprise, right? But one of the reasons why I'm just so passionate about supporting this stage of life is because what we do will affect our grandchildren and future generations. And our lineage, most people, if we think about our grandparents, our parents, they ate organ meats. They had liver that was a part of the regular diet. So, but again, similar to you and most people, it's a strong flavor. I think there's ways to hide it. I will just give a shout out to my colleague. We don't have to talk too much about liver, but my colleague Lily Nichols, she's got a blog and she's an RD and she just has the best recipes for how to hide it, in, a sauce or meatloaf or whatever. And really, really good. Or even a pate, kind of making that fun. A little goes a long way, but there are brands that do desiccated liver just in a capsule format, so ways you can do that. But other foods, are going to be, egg yolks. So I think we're mostly beyond the phase where we were like tossing the egg yolks and just doing egg whites, but I'm not sure. So just in case anyone's still doing that, make sure you are eating the yolk. It won't fully, you need a couple of eggs a day, and you still can't fully meet your choline needs from just that. I will say that beef, even though it gets such a bad rap, is so nutrient dense and fertility supporting nutrients. B12 is a real concern on vegan and vegetarian diets. There's no plant-based source of B12. And choline, it's very difficult to get enough of. So I would just say I would encourage on a vegan or vegetarian diet to consider supplementation, particularly for B12, but I think you're going to need it for choline and probably folate.
This was really good. That was a really good point you made. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Joan Buckley from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, and today you are learning about the role that men play when it comes to fertility, conception, and overall health of the baby. Very important nutrition information today. My guest is Ayla Barmmer, a registered dietitian, nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner who specializes in fertility issues. Now my question for you today is, I know I saw this in your reading. I did read some stuff that you've written and some of the other interviews that you've done, and you do focus on do's and don'ts. Mm-hmm. And I think those are really helpful things for people to remember. And women's health, I think, is being promoted from a very young age now. Nutrition is everywhere. It's in TV. It's in writing. The kids just know so much about nutrition. But if they were to start, like say our college students or listeners, what would be 3 don'ts and what would be 4 do's?
The thing to focus on really is adding a lot of the right stuff in. And so rather than restricting, we want to flood the body with the right stuff to help combat the things we can't control, such as our age or certain environmental exposures. So, top of that list is eating a diet rich in antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids. So think fruits and vegetables, so produce, all kinds of produce, a variety as much as you can. I love to recommend aiming for half of your plate or 2 full cups of produce at each meal, which is a lot more than most people are eating. I think you may eat vegetables, but do you eat enough and enough variety? So trying to aim to eat more produce is a great idea. Seafood, including shellfish, it's uniquely high in fertility supporting nutrients like zinc, selenium. Selenium's a fantastic nutrient that you also can find in Brazil nuts. You only need maybe 1 or 2. You can actually overdo it on Brazil nuts. So just those tend to be those large ones that are in the mixed nuts packs, that people toss, but yeah, they are really just so potent in selenium, which is not an antioxidant, but it kind of turns on a fire hose of antioxidants in the body. And so that's a great one. But those omega-3 fatty acids are something that we know, based on large population surveying and data, most people are not getting enough of in. And it's worth pointing out again, and I know I'm going to sound anti-plant-based diets or anti-vegan and vegetarian. I'm not, but they aren't, I am supportive of plant-based, but inclusive of some animal proteins and at least seafood, because there are plant-based sources of omega-3 fatty acids, but they are not as bioavailable as seafood. We have to convert plant-based omega-3 fatty acids into a form that our body can actually use. And that's actually a really quite inefficient process that in turn actually requires other nutrients. So that's, I think, worth pointing out. Number 2 would be, no surprise, right? Exercising routinely. But the way to think about it is it's really just, it's moving your body so that you're pumping fresh, oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood, particularly between, your brain and your reproductive organs. That's how that system really talks. And that oxygenated blood is a big component to keeping sperm healthy and viable, and also eggs, healthy and viable, as well as hormone balance. Number 3, I would say getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, but to add, and again, not a surprise, but I think what's tough for maybe college students in particular, definitely night shift workers, anyone with kind of varying schedules, is we want to try to sync as closely as possible to the light and dark cycles, because our circadian rhythm, which is our internal clock, is very much tied to our reproductive health. And it's one of the reasons, again, why we actually do see more fertility issues in shift workers. So tough to do. I mean, I remember, especially in my master's program, just like late nights on blue screens. Now, they have like blue light blocking glasses, which I would really encourage at a minimum if you can't get off the screens. And then 4, I'd say daily supplementation, because we aren't going to be able to do all the things perfectly all the time. We also have a lot of factors that are creating a need now in our modern environment for more nutrients than we might have needed in the past. And we see things like soil depletion and food processing and time and travel and transit for food to get to us. So foods are not as nutrient dense, anymore, unfortunately. And so I think there's a really good case to be made for quality, strategic daily supplementation. So those are my 4 do's.
How about your don'ts?
These won't be a surprise, I don't think. Number 1 is trying to minimize chemical and heavy metal exposure. And again, the reality is we're exposed to more environmental chemicals, pollutants, heavy metals than we have been in any other time in history. And so some big bang for your buck type things to focus on, especially if you're on a budget. And if this area feels just overwhelming to you, pick the things that are to evaluate the things that are most frequent in your lifestyle. Some things that I usually talk about with patients in my practice is, do you have those wall plug-in air fresheners, the car air fresheners, the ones that you put in the vent and are blowing out, or hanging from your rearview mirror, perfumes and colognes, Febreze or the Mrs. Meyer's products, which are heavily greenwashed. But looking at those fragrance products, because we know that those synthetic fragrances have unregulated but known hormone disrupting chemicals in them. Phthalates would be a good example. And it has a much bigger impact than you may realize, especially if you're breathing that in consistently. So I like to focus there first. And then you can look at other things, like if there's a beauty care product, especially for women, because women tend to use more beauty care products per the research. That like a lotion you use every day, things like that.
Do you have a link or a blog? I know you spoke with someone else that you could give to our listening audience so they could learn more.
I pour a lot of time and effort into what we call our knowledge well on fullwellfertility.com.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Ayla Barmmer. I know we've already told everyone you're a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and a functional medicine practitioner, but you have this passion for making sure that we have healthy babies, and you do specialize in fertility issues, so we really appreciate you for coming to the show. This is Joan Buckley from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, and we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.